we're watching the airline stocks right now, especially after the news we got from American Airlines, which is, it's not a secret that the airlines face trouble after the September 30th CARES Act deadline expires, and American talking about cutting service to 15 markets. We're going to talk about that in a second. But to get a bigger picture about why this essential industry, the airlines, faces more headwinds, we invite into the stream Nick Calio. He is the Airlines for America CEO. And in a way, you speak for all of the airlines in the United States. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Before we jump into this news as we approach the end of September and the CARES Act news, got to ask you, your group did a study about the impact of essentially the shutdown of the airline industry and on the states and the impact there. And it comes as no surprise that, for instance, New York was essentially decimated. I mean, JFK is closed, LaGuardia, it was all pretty much shut down.
That's correct. And it makes sense because of the quarantines, where the hot spots were. And it's been almost a rolling shutdown, one place after another. But if you look at New York and New Jersey and Florida, those places have been shut down more than others. Less flights because people don't want to go there or can't go there because of the quarantines involved. And we're facing this patchwork of quarantines across the United States, which is having a big impact on whether people travel or not.
And that issue of whether people travel or not has been difficult for the airlines as they plan their capacity. For instance, Southwest yesterday, maybe this morning, put out the note that, look, we originally thought capacity would have to be cut by about 30% year over year in the third quarter. Now they're saying more, 35%. But they also said, we will not take the second part of the stimulus from Congress that was part of the original CARES Act. Then you get American Airlines, which is going to take that stimulus and may have to lay people off if there isn't further relief. And the airlines are nowhere out of the trouble. So very simply, should Congress do more, as has been suggested, maybe push that deadline to March with another $25 billion to help the airlines that are truly essential and need it?
We think it should, and let me explain why. I think every industry has been hit, Adam. We probably been hit harder than others. We were flying, 2019, we flew record numbers. We were flying 2.5 million passengers and 58,000 tons of cargo every day. First 2 months of this year looked great. The numbers were increasing. We expected record numbers again. In a 2-week period, we were down 96%. Flying people in numbers we hadn't seen since the 1950s, and travel overseas, non-existent, and still basically non-existent. That hit really hard. At that time, we had what everybody was describing as fortress balance sheets. It all went out the window. We were losing $12 billion a month. We're still losing $5 to $6 billion a month. Today, we're down 70% from where we were last year. So without those passengers on airplanes and flying, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about whether it's safe to fly or not, because it is. We can't do what we used to do. We're going to end up having a much smaller workforce. The first CARES Act, which was the part grant, part loan part, was not a bailout, which you referred to as before I heard. It was a pass-through that allowed employees to stay on, not go on unemployment, protected Medicare, Social Security, and everything. It was a Compass Lexicon did a study. There was great benefit to it, billions of dollars. Traffic has not come back. We started to see traffic tick up in early July. Then there was the surge. You know, the virus has not cooperated at all. And so we are looking at what can be done, but we thought traffic would be up more. Without traffic starting to return, we're going to be much smaller airlines than we were before. It's going to take a long time to recover, to get traffic back to where it was. So if you want to keep those people on payroll and trained and certified, we think an extension is in order. We're an essential industry. We can lead the economy back to recovery, but we are not an industry where you can lay people off and then throw them the keys and say, start up the plane. They have to be maintain their training and their certification. It can be months. And then there's the question, you mentioned the reduction in service. That has started. It's going to continue with many of the airlines that are our members, because the demand is not there. And when the demand is not there, you can't afford to keep flying people, you know, with 1 or 2 people on a flight or 3 people on a flight or even 15. I flew back from Miami on a 737-800. There were 20 people on the entire flight. That is remarkable.
Nick,
Yes.
It is remarkable. It's Julie here. And as you talk about wanting this extra aid to keep those people on the payroll, I'm curious as you make your pitch to Congress. I mean, as Adam mentioned, there are a lot of industries that are making this pitch right now because they want to be saved. Do you make the pitch that airlines are a public utility? I mean, we're having this whole debate over the post office right now, which is seen as a public utility. Do airlines fall into the same category? And if they do they not only need help right now, do we need to restructure them and think about them differently and how they operate?
No, we are not a public utility. Although, Julie, I will tell you, I've often thought in recent years that sometimes some of the public did because prices were so low and so accessible. We were in the golden age of travel. Almost everybody in this country could fly. When I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, nobody got on an airplane because it wasn't affordable. Then we got deregulation. If you want to see prices go up, let the government get involved in running our business again heavily and telling us who we can fly, when we can fly, and where we can fly. And prices are going to go up. And the public, which is so used to flying, both for leisure and for business, is not going to be able to anymore. So we are not a public utility by any stretch. We can rectify ourselves. Our companies have done so much to trim their balance sheets for a while over the U.S. fleet. Now it's still 33%. Cut, give voluntary leaves, voluntary retire early, cut executive compensation substantially, took self-help measures to try to get our balance sheet. And here's where the CARES Act 1 also came in. It allowed us to get a lifeline to the private markets. So we built up our liquidity and our balance sheets. Most are in good shape. I know that Southwest has announced it will not take the loans from the government. I was at the White House in 9/11, and we structured the loans in such a way that the airlines could not afford to take them. And that's not a good way to go, because if you want to have the aid and the stimulus, you need to make the terms affordable and reasonable. We had a great industry. We had 10 years of profitability, hired back 186,000 people. Our wages averaged 5.5% more than any other industry. Those are all good things. Those are things that we ought to try to replicate and look to the future. But again, it's going to take a little time. So the CARES Act 2 could provide a little more time.
Nick, got to say thank you. Nick Calio is the Airlines for America CEO. And during the commercial break, you and I are going to talk about Cleveland Hopkins International. I used to live in Cleveland Heights. We'll be right back after this.
Okay, great. Thank you.